Hello and welcome to the ODLAN Lightning Talk. My name is Hannah and I'm one of the co-founders of ODLAN. We're a digital-based organization with partners all over Ontario, Canada, and we acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. Today, I'm speaking from Treaty 13 territory, and the area known as Tekaronto has been cared for by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples, and we acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So, what is ODLAN? We're the Ontario Digital Literacy and Access Network. We're a community-based pilot initiative that directs grassroots 2S LGBTQ organizations to existing programs and resources that facilitate digital literacy and remove barriers to accessing online spaces. There are many programs that promote digital literacy, access, and security. However, there are so many for so many different skill levels that they can be overwhelming. It is also difficult to find resources that are specifically 2S LGBTQ inclusive. The demand for easily accessible, curated resources is growing now that the pandemic has shifted so many vital services online. ODLAN came into existence during the pandemic because our founding members had firsthand experience with organizations encountering the sharp COVID learning curve and having to convert in-person programs to virtual programs as quickly and effectively as possible. Though online social and educational events were desperately needed, many people did not know how or where to access online events, could not comfortably use an internet browser or email application, did not have a device with a working camera or microphone, or had no personal devices at all. Many people also felt anxious about new hardware and software and felt that they might damage their existing systems or look incompetent in front of others. This anecdotal evidence was further supported by research conducted by ODLAN founder Stephanie Johnson, who investigated the ways the digital divide was impacting 2S LGBTQ older adults during the pandemic. Having noticed these issues with moving online, ODLAN exists to try and tackle the digital divide. The digital divide refers to accessibility differences between people who can access the internet and benefit from its contents and those who cannot, and this is still a big problem in Canada. Though recent government initiatives have expanded the geographic availability of high-speed internet and cellular data services, the internet remains out of reach for millions. Many rural and First Nations communities do not have access to adequate high-speed internet. The pandemic has also closed many of the public spaces where the internet and devices like computers and printers are available for free. Now, you're probably already familiar with the digital divide, and you might be thinking, well, why do 2S LGBTQ people need their own digital literacy? Don't we use the same internet as everybody else? Well, yes, but queer populations do face unique access barriers when it comes to getting online and getting the most out of virtual spaces. ODLAN has identified some of these key obstacles. To begin, there's economic barriers. On average, queer people experience more poverty and job insecurity than their heterosexual peers. This means that devices and a stable internet connection may be too expensive for many. This is heightened where queerness intersects with other axes of marginalization, like race, immigration status, class, or age. For example, organizations that serve queer seniors have had a particularly difficult time transitioning their members to online programs. And because queer older adults are often less technologically savvy, this means that even when a queer seniors organization can afford to start a device renting program, which is already expensive and takes effort to coordinate, they will also need to provide comprehensive instructions and tech support for those devices so they can even be used. Because of economic precarity and family rejection, many queer people, particularly queer youth, have no money and no permanent housing. This means that they rely on libraries, shelters, and certain businesses for free access to devices and Wi-Fi. However, many of these have become unavailable due to the pandemic. Secondly, there are safety and privacy barriers. Many spaces are not safe for queer people, and being outed as gay or trans can have major negative consequences for many. This means that data security and savviness to avoid hostile corners of the internet are paramount for our communities. These safety issues can hit even closer to home, and many 2S LGBTQ people are stuck at home with homophobic and transphobic parents, family members, and caregivers because of COVID. This can make finding queer communities, healthcare, and other services extremely difficult if there's no access to a private space and device. Many digital literacy and device renting programs are available through charities, religious institutions, and schools. Unfortunately, many of these institutions have been known to discriminate against 2S LGBTQ people. Many queer folks have already had bad experiences with these institutions and do not want to risk being outed, misgendered, insulted, or denied service just because of who they are. As a result, many remain wary of approaching organizations that may not be 2S LGBTQ affirming. And thirdly are representation barriers. It can be hard to know if an organization is queer-friendly if their only promotional images are straight-appearing couples. Many tech support and digital literacy organizations are well-meaning with their inclusive imagery, but may rely on dated terminology or only acknowledge queer populations during Pride season. While many organizations are not actively discriminatory, it may be exhausting to have to educate someone about your gender or sexuality when you've just gone to them for help with your iPad. Resources that specifically address things like how to use dating apps, how to find queer-friendly healthcare, how to make sure your preferred name is displayed on your profiles, and how to find queer social groups are also hard to find in the ocean of general digital literacy lessons. Because of these unique barriers, ODLAN believes that grassroots 2S LGBTQ organizations must adapt to the community's needs, providing their own digital literacy and support to their members. ODLAN's approach is to meet people where they are, to provide a comfortable learning experience and relevant information. The vast wealth of information online can be especially overwhelming for novice users who may not even know what they don't know. Many organizations do not have the capacity to do all of the work of trying to find accurate information in simple, understandable language while fulfilling their central mandates. Because ODLAN is an initiative run by queer people for queer people, we have the perspective to curate the resources that are most relevant to our communities and identify unique barriers that 2S LGBTQ people face when trying to get the most out of the internet. So aside from identifying barriers, what does ODLAN actually do? ODLAN is helping organizations develop the infrastructure and capacity to offer digital initiatives that will tackle the digital divide in 2S LGBTQ communities. We've been operating for about 6 months now, and most of our work has involved curating existing relevant resources and connecting with organizations looking to start their own digital literacy or tech lending programs. We also curate and provide resources for digital literacy organizations looking to become more queer inclusive. We are currently expanding our capacity to make our own educational resources and specific training materials for organizational staff. As ODLAN continues to grow, we hope to expand our network partners to keep grassroots 2S LGBTQ organizations in Ontario connected so they can share information, best practices, and resources. We are currently developing a survey to help organizations audit their digital capabilities, and we're expanding our team to gather and produce more resources. The internet is a utility, and we think it should be fully accessible to everyone. We work to end the digital divide in the 2S LGBTQ community and beyond, and we look forward to collaborating with other interested organizations. If you have any questions, resources you'd like to share, or would like to join our network, please visit odlan.ca. Thank you for listening to our lightning talk.